everyone, and welcome to Shocktober. Now, anybody who's been following along live might notice that I've missed a couple days here, and my goal is to do a horror movie every day in October. Well, I kind of had some emergency family issues, and I'm not really going to go into it, but just know that everything is now fine. Everybody seems to be okay. It was just kind of a scary moment, and really was focusing on that instead of the podcast for a couple days, just because, I didn't need to worry about this while that was going on. So, when this episode drops is actually, I'm going to be dropping an episode for every day that I missed. So there are going to be 31 episodes, but they're not going to be dropping every day, so there's going to be some dropping all at once. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. I think everybody can be fine with that. Hopefully everybody can understand. Thank you for the people who, I put out the message on Twitter. Thank you to the people who, hoped everything was okay and, sent me their thoughts. Like, that was really nice. You guys didn't have to do that, so thank you for that. But let's get into it. Let's get into our next horror film, and this is one that I've been dying to watch for a little while now. I bought this movie as soon as it came on iTunes. Like, the trailer immediately grabbed my attention, and for some reason I just kind of kept putting it off watching it, and I finally sat down and got a chance to check it out. And that movie is The Void, currently on Netflix, which is actually where I watched it, which is kind of ridiculous considering I bought it on iTunes. But The Void is very much a throwback to 80s horror films, particularly 80s effects horror films, things like Hellraiser and The Thing. It's very much like, what if we made one of those effects-driven horror movies in 2015, which is when this movie, I think, originally was made or came out. It's interesting. It's a cool idea. I love when people take old film techniques and then use them in the modern day. I can't think of a lot of examples of movies like this off the top of my head, but The Void is definitely one at the top currently because, for one, I love horror films and I love effects-driven horror films from the 80s, and seeing that done today in a modern day is super fucking cool. So kind of the basic plot of the movie is, I don't have the synopsis right in front of me, but I'll just kind of give it to you from my mind. But basically, a bunch of people are holed up in a hospital, and a crazy cult is surrounding them on the outside, and they're trapped inside. Like, a cop he finds a dude like bleeding on the side of the road, who at the beginning of the movie we see escaping. And then it's like, oh, the cult seems to be after this guy, but they're after the people in the hospital. What's going on? And things just kind of start to unravel from there. And there's these crazy monsters, which is where the effects come in. And they look fucking fantastic. The movie, like, the story is kind of like whatever. I did expect more out of the story, so I was a little disappointed from that aspect of it. All the performances are pretty good. Again, they could have been a little better, but for what the movie is, I enjoyed the performances. I really enjoyed the story that was there, but in the end, you kind of end up not really caring about the story. It's more about, oh, let me see the crazy, brutal effects, and it does take a little while to get there. Like, you get some stuff early on to, like, bait you along, but it's really the last act of the movie where you get the crazy, awesome, like, just so much awesome bloody effects, and is really the highlight of the film. The movie's good all the way through, but you're definitely watching it for the last act. So, like, there's not a whole lot to say about the movie, so I'll kind of talk about some of the things I like. I like some of the twists in the story, which I think work really well. I didn't see them coming. I love the effects. There's some good early ones. For example, a character walks into a room, and for some reason a nurse is suddenly crazy, and she has, like, cut off her face, and she's, like, stabbing a patient or something. And yeah, it's like, you can tell there's, like, real makeup applied to these people, and it's really well done and meticulously modeled so it looks as graphic as possible. There's an early on scene, like, one of these big monsters show up, and a lot of tentacles and stuff. So there's a scene where like tentacles reach out and wrap around somebody's leg to grab them, and you can clearly tell that it's like stop motion animated, but like really well done. And the only way you would honestly know is if you're like a fan of these movies and you kind of notice the like the frame hitching to signify stop animation, but it looks really good. And it's awesome to see that, like, oh, they could have just done this in CG. They could have found some weird, goofy way to do it, but they wanted to do it how it was done back then, and it works. And it's moments like that as you're watching the movie where you're kind of like, oh, fuck, man, they're really just going all for it. Like, they're making an 80s movie in 2015, and it's awesome. The music is also really good. It's not like a soundtrack I would buy, but it's music that I really enjoy listening to watching the movie. And this is a movie I will definitely watch again, because I do feel like I didn't get everything out of it that I needed to from a first viewing. It's not like a confusing movie by any means, but there's just a lot to appreciate visually that watching it once, I mean, it's, you could just kind of like watch the third act over and over again, but I want to watch the whole movie and get just as much out of it as I possibly can. It was a movie I put off for a long time, just like in anticipation, and I was hoping that it wouldn't let me down, and it didn't. Like I said, there were some slight disappointments, but they don't hurt the movie. Like, to me, it's just a couple things that stop it from being like a perfect horror film. So to me, it's a 4 out of 5. I really enjoy it. I highly recommend it, especially since it's on Netflix right now. Definitely watch it before it's gone, because, you know, stuff is flying off of Netflix nowadays. So check that one out. I'm sure it'll be there all throughout October. Highly recommend. But that is The Void, and that's going to be today's episode. You know, it's a little bit of a short one. There's not a ton to talk about because the movie really stands out through its visuals, so I can't explain a lot of them, but and I don't want to spoil it because the twist is actually pretty good, and I think this one is worth watching. So I'm just going to recommend it, and that's kind of all I can say about it. So sorry if today's episode's a little short, but since I'm doing a bunch of movies at once, you'll have plenty to listen to. So that's going to be it for today's Shocktober. Be sure to listen to the next episode where we're going to talk about another zombie movie, our second one of this year's event. So I'm surprised there aren't more of them, honestly, but we're not done yet, so we'll see how many we get in the end. But that's going to be it for today's episode, or this part of today's episode, I guess, because there's going to be multiple. Be sure to check out the next one. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you soon.